One of the things I started doing is looking at the book of Kohelet, the book of Ecclesiastes, and doing a commentary, a brief commentary on this wonderful book. The most philosophical book, we could say, in Scripture. And it's not an easy book to interpret. For example, in the Sonsino series on the Bible, the 5 Megillot, A. Cohen, one of the authors, makes this statement that in some respects, Ecclesiastes is the most difficult book of the Bible for the commentator. Its complexities and obscurities are so many and often baffling that the assumption of dogmatic certainty is unwise and unwarranted. That's on page 104 of the Sonsino commentary of the volume, the 5 Megillot. What I'd like to do is go through this wonderful book. It's beautiful in Hebrew. I would like to read the Hebrew to the best of my ability, and then translate it, followed then by commentary. And we worked our way up through the introduction, up through from chapter 1 up through verse, let me just find it right here, chapter 1 up through verse 11. And we've already talked about those verses. I did an overview in the first video. The second video, we worked from chapter 1:1 to verse 11. What I'd like to do is go back, read the Hebrew with an English translation for anyone that would like to work in Hebrew. But I'd like to read it slowly enough for anyone to hear and follow. Perhaps some of my former Hebrew students might have an interest. I am a retired seminary professor, and this has been one of my favorite books. The Kohelet talks about wisdom and how to live life. What is life about? And how to avoid the rabbit trails of life, and how to find the right kind of life that one should live. And it comes from one shepherd, we're told, at the end of the book of the Kohelet. So I'd like to begin in verse 1 again. Divrei Kohelet ben David melech Berushalayim. The words of the Kohelet, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Havel Havalim, Amar Kohelet. Havel Havalim, Hakol Havel. Vanity of vanities, says the Kohelet. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. That's the theme that will reoccur throughout the book. Even at the end, as we've seen in the first video, he concludes summarizing that very same theme again in chapter 12, where he repeats it, having gone through a discussion of a variety of things. He then repeats the same words in verse 8. Havel Havalim Amar HaKohelet Hakol Havel. Vanity of vanities, says the Kohelet, all is vanity. We then, as we continued, begin to look at verses 3 down through verse 11, where he sets forth the introduction, showing the transitoriness of all things. Havel means that which is transitory, that which is fleeting, like one's, say, on a cold day, looking at your breath, it's there and then it's gone. Or a tea kettle boiling, water or steam comes out and then it's gone. That would be one way I would describe the word Havel or Hevel. We move on, verse 3, Yitron la'adam b'chol amalo Ya'amol tachat ha-shamish. That is, what profit or advancement is there for man of all of his toil, wherein he toils under the sun? We had said early on, tachat ha-shemish is looking at life under the sun, observing it as one would look at what's going on in life. Then in verse 4, Dor holek v'dor ba. V'ha'aretz le'olam omaded. That is, a generation goes, a generation passes away, or another generation comes, a generation passes away or goes, a generation comes, but the earth abides forever. Here we see the passing of generations as a further illustration of his theme, and yet the permanency of the earth still abiding. And then we move on in verse 5. V'zorach hashemesh uva hashemesh ve'el mekomo sho'ev zoreachu sham. That is, the sun rises and the sun goes down, and unto its place, literally, it hurries to go from where it arose. It almost is panting to repeat. Sho'ef is telling us here the same thing over and over, showing the ceaseless cycles of life and the transitoriness of it as well. And then he goes on, verse 6, Holek el darom v'sovev el tzafon, sovev holek haruach v'al sevivotav sham haruach. That is, the wind goes unto the south, and it turns about unto the north. Turning goes the wind, and upon its turnings or circuits, the wind returns. There's a play on the word sovev, and then we have sevivotav. In other words, turning continually goes the wind, and upon its circuits or turnings, the wind returns. Showing again the transitoriness of all things. Then in verse 7, Kol hanechalim holechim el hayam, v'hayam einenu maleh el makom sheha nechalim holechim sham heim shavim lalechat. That is, all the rivers run into the sea, and yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from where the rivers go, there they go again, showing the ceaseless cycle of rivers that continue to repeat the same thing over and over. Then we come to verse 8. Kol hadevarim yegeim lo yuchal ish ledaber, lo tisbach ayin lirot, velo timale ozen mishmoa. That is, all things are toiling to weariness. Man is not able to speak it. It's so much to utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. In other words, there are so many things that illustrate his theme of the transitoriness, of the constant change in everything he's observing, that the eye cannot take it all in, or the ear cannot hear it all. And then he talks about that which has been, it is that which will be. Notice verse 9. Ma shechayahu sheyeh, uma shena'asa hu sheyeh ve'ein kol chadash tachat ha-shamish. That is, that which has been, it is that which will be. And that which has been done, it is that which shall be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. In other words, history repeats itself. Nothing new under the sun. Then in verse 10, Yesh davar sheyumar re'eh ze chadash hu kavar haya la'olamim asher haya melef fanenu. That is, there is a thing where one might say, it might be said, see, this is new. It has been already in the ages which were before it. In other words, we just have forgotten it, but it was always there, the Kohelet is saying. There's just no remembrance of it. And that's in verse 11. Ein zikron l'rishonim v'gam l'Acharonim sheyeyu lo yeye lahem. Zikaron im sheyeyu l'Acharona. That is, there is no remembrance of them of former times, neither shall there be a remembrance of them of later times that are to come, among those that shall come after. In other words, everything repeats itself. We just forgot what the past was. We did an introduction to that last time. Now I'm going to pick up at verse 12 and to the end of chapter 1. And here we're going to be looking at the vanity of human wisdom. And what I'm going to do as I go through this book, I'm going to seek to explain it from my own understanding of it, and at the same time bring it into the New Testament. Being a Christian professor or a retired seminary professor, I want to see how the New Testament, and especially Christ, responds to some of these themes that we find in Kohelet, in Ecclesiastes. So we now are looking at the vanity, the preacher is saying, of the quest for wisdom. It begins in verse 12. Ani Kohelet hayiti melech al Yisrael b'Yerushalayim. That is, I, the Kohelet, have been king over Israel in Jerusalem. Verse 13. V'natati et Levi lidrosh v'latur b'chokma al kol asher na'asa tachat ha-shamayim hu inyan ra natan Elohim livnei ha'adam la'anot bo. That is, I applied my heart, I gave my heart to seek out and to search out with wisdom concerning all which is done under the heavens. It is a sore task that God has, can I say, we might say, afflicted to the sons of men in it. In other words, it's difficult to try to search out and try to see what the Kohelet wants to see. And it's an exercise that is painful, the Kohelet is saying. And then notice verse 14. Ra'iti et kol hama'asim shena asu tachat hashamish v'henei hakol hevel uruot ruach. That is, that which is done. I have seen all the works which are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and a striving after the wind. And then he continues in verse 15. Me'uvat lo yuchal litkon v'chezron lo yuchal lehimanot. That is, that which is crooked, little proverb here, cannot be made straight, and that which is lacking cannot be numbered. Verse 16. So dibarti ani im libi lemor, ani hine higdauti leosafti chokma al kol asher haya lefanai al Yerushalayim v'libi ra'a arbe chokma v'da'at. That is, I have gotten more wisdom. I spoke with my heart, saying, behold, I have gotten great wisdom, more wisdom than all which were before me in Jerusalem or over Jerusalem. And my heart saw great, can I say, wisdom and knowledge. I had experience of wisdom and knowledge, he says. And then in verse 17, V'etana lebi leda'at chokma v'da'at holelot v'sechlut yadati shegam zehu ranyon ruach. That is, I applied or I gave my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I understood that this indeed was a striving after the wind. Verse 18. Ki berov chokma rav ka'as ve'yosif da'at yosif machov. That is, for in much wisdom, another proverb, is much vexation, and the one who increases knowledge increases sorrow. I would like to comment now, sort of like a brief running commentary on the text that was read. Notice in verse 12, he begins his theme, the theme of vanity, in verse 12. And he said, I gave my heart to seek and to search out with wisdom concerning all that is done under the heaven. And notice, as he writes, he says, when he said, I gave my heart in Hebrew, we could understand it like I meditated upon this. I put my mind to it. I gave my heart to search and to seek with wisdom concerning all which is done under the sun. He is going to make a search of everything he can, and he is going to use his wisdom in his search to try to find out what is done under the sun. Looking at life as we see it from an observational, experiential point of view. I want to see, he says, all that is done under the sun, and it's a sore task which God has given to the sons of men to afflict them in it. As I look to what I am seeking to understand under the sun, I find it to be a painful task. We cannot get out of it, however, because God has left it for us to try to search and understand what life is about. So he says, I have seen all the works which are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and a chasing after the wind. Again, we hear his theme. He says, I have sought to examine all the works which are done under the sun, and behold, it's transitory and fleeting. It is a chasing after the wind. If you could catch the wind, you would not have anything after you got it. Thus he describes how life is so ephemeral. The reason wisdom will not satisfy is then described in verse 15 by a proverb. That which is crooked cannot be made straight, and that which is lacking is not able to be numbered. Proverbially speaking, he says, there are crooked things that I see, but I am not able to make them straight. I did not know some of the crooked things before I got wisdom. But now that I have obtained wisdom, I can see things that are crooked, but I do not have the ability to straighten them out. Furthermore, I can see what is lacking. I am not able to get what is needed to make the sum. I have 7, and I want to get to 10, but I cannot find 3 by way of illustration. So he describes in this parable how wisdom gives more understanding, but not the ability to correct the flaws you now see. So he said, I spoke with my heart, saying, behold, I have gotten great wisdom, and I have gotten more wisdom above all which were before me in Jerusalem. Indeed, my heart saw much wisdom and knowledge. He wants to say, I really have acquired great wisdom. As a matter of fact, I have more wisdom than all which were before me in Jerusalem. Of all the other kings and people, I am the wisest. This would fit well, I believe, with Solomon. He then continued, I gave my heart to know wisdom and to know folly and madness. I not only gave my heart to know wisdom, he says, but I gave my heart to know its opposite, in folly and madness. And I know that this indeed is also a striving after the wind. Again, he repeats his theme. No matter how much knowledge I have been able to find and wisdom on the human plane, and even its opposite, I also know that it is like chasing the wind. Then he gives a second proverb, for in much wisdom is much vexation, and the one who increases knowledge increases pain. The more wisdom I have obtained, he says, the more pain I have found. Here we find parallelism in this proverb. In wisdom is much vexation. Then he repeats it. The one who increases knowledge increases pain. In my search for wisdom, I have seen all the world that has so many problems, but I do not have the ability to change it all. Therefore, what my wisdom has brought me is pain and vexation. Human wisdom is not totally the answer to life because of the lacking, he says, of the ability to change what I know, but I did not know before, but I don't have the ability to do anything about it. While the search for human wisdom leads to that which is lacking and that which is painful. The search for wisdom, I believe, as a Christian teacher in the New Testament, is found in Jesus Christ, who leads to fullness of life. Colossians 2, for example, 1-3 says, for I would that you knew what great conflict I have for you, Paul writes, and for them in Laodicea, and for as many as have not seen my face in the flesh, that their hearts might be comforted, being knit together in love, and unto all riches of the full assurance of understanding, and to the acknowledgement of the mystery of God and of the Father and of Christ, in whom, Paul writes, are all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. Paul in Colossians teaches us that while human knowledge has its limitations, such as Gnosticism that he was writing to correct, we can find all wisdom and all wealth of wisdom in all its fullness in the knowledge of the mystery of God, he writes, that is found in Jesus Christ, in whom are all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge hidden. While human wisdom can lead to a blind alley, if we pursue Christ in all of the knowledge of the mystery of the incarnation, we will find in him Paul says, all the treasures of wisdom and of knowledge.